915-544-KTSM, 915-544-5876, or comment online on our stream at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. It's 4 p.m. Mountain Time, and that means it's time to talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk, because we do have Ida Beza Gardner demonstrating over there on the Facebook. Hello to you as well with the little wave there. And it's good. I often say we got a lot for you, jam-packed show, those kind of things, but rarely have I meant it more literally. I'm wondering if we're going to be able to cram it all in here today, because we have got a lot to get into, just some of the more wider-ranging subjects. We do have the state legislative session coming up. Interview today with you with State Rep Joe Moody on some of the major priorities, in an interview that probably ran a little bit long, but hey, we got a lot to get into there. But a lot of changes going on as of this most recent hour, including Supreme Court decision stays being put into place, affecting what we are experiencing right now in the Borderland whenever it comes to Title 42, the anticipated end of it, as well as what the situation is on our streets. We have disaster declarations, news conferences going on, not immediately at this point in time, but pretty damn close, or it may still be going on, a little bit hard to tell. Stuck in the studio here makes it relying on the reporting that comes in sometimes, as we also have Austin Radfair, greetings as well, Angel Rueda, happy holidays, wave as well, and Amber Banda with the rock on, do appreciate it. But, yeah, we got a lot going on with the border security and immigration situation. Robbie Flores, hello to you and everyone as well. We got disaster declarations or emergency declarations getting put into place, more considerations from the county, state guard troops now arriving in town or on their way, and, well, the temperatures continue to drop, just putting that extra level of oomph and emphasis on just about everything around our region. So, yeah, we got a lot to get into. And, oh, by the way, there were elections. Yeah, we got results from the city council elections, some surprises, some upsets, and some new faces. Well, all new faces that we're going to be seeing there on city council. For the most, I mean, they might be familiar in some ways here, but yeah, lot to get into today. So if you're tuned in with us, appreciate you being here as we are counting down the short-ish week ahead of the holidays here. Happy Hanukkah for those celebrating that on its progression nights here, as well as the upcoming Christmas holidays. I made the mistake of going anywhere near not one but a couple of these shopping malls and centers in our area over the weekend, and yeah, this is definitely full swing, full of pace. I mean, it was the last full shopping holiday ahead of Christmas, so I should have known what I was getting into, but it definitely took me like a half hour to get to lunch after one of our programs over the weekend. Not the usual kind of expectation, but hey, forewarned, forearmed. I say that enough. I should probably live by it, including when it comes to traffic. So hope y'all are staying safe out there and being careful on the roads, because, yeah, there's a lot of traffic. Even before we get to some of the things happening, again, in central and specifically South El Paso, where the images that are coming in both of the border crossings that have been happening more or less apace, and also what's going on with just people being housed on the streets. I mean, we've been talking about more than a couple of things. There have been some cleanups that have started. Let's just go to one of the big things, of course, is that over the weekend, El Paso Mayor Oscar Leeser did declare that state of emergency, disaster declaration, etc., basically saying that the time is now appropriate from our news partners over there at KFOX 14, saying that we felt it's a proper time today to call for a state of emergency, specifically saying that on Saturday as part of the news conference. Yeah, quoting him directly, and again, the coverage from our news partners there, I said from the beginning that it would call it when I felt that either our asylum seekers or the community was not safe, and given the situation we are seeing with, again, people having been camped out on the streets for lack of another place to go. I mean, even with the transportation and the majority of cases end up being moving out of town, given the sheer volume that we keep talking about, with us seeing a couple thousand crossings a day, and with that anticipated end of Title 42 expected to possibly balloon to 5,000 or 6,000 just in our region, it's hard to not understate or overstate, frankly, the humanitarian conditions that could exist from that here. So with the sub-freezing temperatures we have been seeing in the region, not a good situation here. So what Lisa went on to say as part of his news conference again Saturday, that is not the way we want to treat people. And by calling a state of an emergency, it gives us the ability today to be able to do what we couldn't do until we called it. I know Rueda saying that the proper time was a long emphasis word that I can't repeat time ago here. Understand the frustration maybe a little bit on that. And I mean, certain phrases come to mind, better late than never, but certain things have begun happening. But a major twist happening right now, again, right before the show, John Browson saying wait until Wednesday, that's saying all hell will break loose. Again, I still think that we are more or less going to be locked in, but there may be mitigating factors, including the fact that Title 42, as of right now, will not end on Wednesday. That being the Supreme Court stay that has been ordered with Chief Justice John Roberts saying that they're going to at least temporarily stop the program and policy from ending. And then there are some more actions that could be coming. The Biden administration has until Tuesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time to respond to that, basically saying if they want to keep the stay in place or challenge it. So, yeah, and Falcon Meta saying they seem to have money for everything else. Why not hotel rooms? We are getting to the point where that is becoming even unavailable. Some nonprofit groups in town have been organizing that, but just, okay, myriad of more things. I don't want to try to squeeze into the first segment here before we get into our interview with Joe Moody on other things that are coming, is that the EPISD is actually looking at possibly opening up some of its facilities in order to be used as temporary shelters. Now, there are a few questions there. Some of y'all have brought up the idea. I want to say it was a caller within the last couple of weeks to a month or so asking why not use some of that space, and those are some of the questions still remain, whether it will be some of the vacant schools, existing facilities, etc. So there's a whole lot swirling all around this. And oh, by the way, did I mention that there was that election, and we have the new city council members that are going to be with the final election results upset, some interesting, and that's just over 5% voter turnout. That is just in the midst of all these other conversation, I find personally egregious. But, well, here are the headlines when it comes to that. In District 1, we are looking at Brian Kennedy securing his win, about 69.5% over Annalisa Cordova Silverstein with about 30.5%, with the total decision there being made by about 4,200 people. Just keep in mind the size and scope here. In District 6, we're looking at soon-to-be former state rep and now city council-elect member Art Fierro securing his win with 56.5% of the vote over incumbent Claudia Lizette Rodriguez with just over 43% of the vote. And the margins there pretty slim, about just over 300 votes in between them, and the difference there. And then in District 8, one of the least turned out races, unfortunately, we're looking at Chris Canales also handily securing his victory over Bettina Olivares, 63 and change percent to 36.6% Canales over Olivares. So we have a lot going on here, and this is so much to say that there's also more coming on the horizon. Not going to try to keep beating the drum of immigration and border security being the only thing going on in the community. I mean, I'd be hard-pressed to find a more important one, which is why I don't think we're going to be talking about anything else. I mean, there'll be other things we can bring up, but it's probably going to be dominating our first segments to the end of this week, folks. Just got some expectations for you, but still other things that we want to make sure we keep talking about, including with our state representatives. What will be coming up during the legislative session, including some of these issues and a whole lot more. So I was able to visit earlier today with State Rep Joe Moody, representing as a Democrat El Paso's State House District 78, on what some of his priorities are and other major things coming up during this impending legislative session. Yeah, we got, I think January 10th will be the kickoff date this year, and then it's a mad dash through about the first half of the year to cram in everything. So getting some of those priorities and ideas of what is coming. That interview coming up next, already due for that first break of this hour right now. Like I told you, a lot to be brought up this episode today. We'll see if we're able to cram in for this whole week. We still will be doing the free-for-all show on Thursday this week. So what we call it, Throwdown Thursday. Let's take it in the metaphorical and not physical sense in that case. But yeah, that'll be our open line show for the week, as they will be then off for the holiday. At least that's the current plan. I don't really know. Crystal ball is cloudy as ever, particularly with some of these mitigating factors going on. But in any case, stay tuned. Definitely with you here today and talking about the things affecting us here in the Borderland, including, again, legislative focus coming up. We'll definitely be delving into some of these subjects as well. So got to take that first break of this hour. You are tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. A lot more to come, including a Joe Moody coming up with you right now. So in any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Phone calls a little bit later in the show, as we usually do. Let you know when we open up those phone lines. And comments still coming in, including RJ over on the YouTube. Don't want to miss on that. But in any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We have a new accident at Fabens Road and Main Street. Your alternates are going to be Camp Street and Loop Drive. We also have a new accident at Gateway Boulevard south of North Yarborough Drive, as well as Pebble Hills Boulevard eastbound at Ivanhoe. Lee Trevino Drive and Edgemere Boulevard will be those alternates. I'm Mia Allen, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Did you know that there's a Christmas tradition that started in a gas station? Well, it's the Hess Toy Trucks, and it's been around for nearly half a century. We'll bring you their story in this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. The Christmas season is here, and this is our gift to you. We're offering our biggest discounts of the year on every new and certified pre-owned vehicle in our huge inventory.
Get our biggest discounts of the year and exceptional trade-in values during the Big Finish sales event at Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. For a limited time, get $5,000 below MSRP and super low 4.9% APR for 72 months on new 2022 Ram 1500 Low-Star models. $5,750 below MSRP on new 2022 Durango SUVs. $4,000 off new 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokees. All with no payments for 90 days. Worried about your trade or credit? Don't sweat it. Our lenders will push to approve your credit, even if your credit is less than perfect. All military personnel and first responders receive an additional discount. Thank you for your service. Trade and upgrade for less at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 4.9% APR, 1606 per thousand finance. On select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
This holiday season, 12 strangers, 12 tales, 12 ghosts. A fiction podcast from me, Aaron Mankey, starring Malcolm McDowell.
So, this is the afterlife.
This is the liminal space between life and the next chapter. This is the great in-between.
A chilling new collection of stories presented in immersive 3D audio starting December 14th, ending on Christmas Day. Listen to 12 Ghosts on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, did you get that proposal done?
It can wait till tomorrow.
Some things can wait.
Should we book those flights to see your folks?
We can do it later.
But untreated COVID isn't one of them. If you're 50 or older or have a chronic condition, COVID can be deadly. Got COVID symptoms? Talk to a doctor and get treatment right away, because it just can't wait. We can do this. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Text and whatever. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot we're getting into here today, but we still have some other focuses that we at least try to keep up on, including what is going on with the upcoming state legislative session. So as much as, the situation on our streets, the border security and immigration parts of it, absolutely still going on, and even with the Supreme Court decision and stay on that coming out today, still likely to see at least some level. I mean, all of this was anticipation of it, so again, not necessarily unreasonable to say that we're going to be seeing anything maybe totally end anytime soon, but again, we're in cloudy crystal ball territory, so we'll see there. But again, other things going on, including what some of the important state actions will be. This is that kind of mad dash that is, well, in the anticipation period of anyway. As we get into the first part of next year, the Texas legislature will convene for the roughly first half of the year, usually. Anyway, last time was an aberration in a variety of ways. But they're going to be trying to do all of the state lawmaking business within that short period of time. It's one of the more unique things about Texas and how the government works. So able to catch up with State Rep Joe Moody, Democrat representing El Paso's more or less, again, I'm looking at the latest maps, remembering it right, more or less west side and other points of the county, but some of the farthest west points in the state as well, which he gets into a little bit later. But on his priorities and what he wants to actually see and some further expectations coming from it. So I was able to, again, catch up with him earlier today and get kind of the breakdown on all of that. So here is that interview. Enjoy. Joining me now, we have Joe Moody, State Representative for El Paso. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely happy to have you on to talk about some of these important things going on as we are anticipating the 88th legislative session of the Texas legislature. Now that we're past the elections and runoffs and all the points of that, not that there was any particular contentions from the El Paso delegation on here, but now that things are clearer and again past that little bit of kerfuffle, we've now got a lot more to get into when it comes to what will be going on during this legislative session. We've talked about it briefly in the past about some of the overarching topics, but wanted to at least set out some of the major pieces of legislation or issues in general that you are looking to address as, again, you're preparing and my understanding is already going back and forth to us. And because even though this might not be at this point the most publicly viewable process, a lot of stuff happening behind closed doors or in anticipation of the session, but it's still been, I mean, the pregame, so to speak, has been going on apace for a while now, right?
Yeah, that's actually one of the things I think it's good to kind of delve into so people understand. I know that the old saying about the sausage being made, but a lot of the work that goes into the 140-day legislative session takes place before we even start. So you're going to have a lot of the stakeholder meetings. You're going to have a lot of the kind of digging into the details. What are the pitfalls with particular legislation, or where is your support, where is your opposition, trying to kind of line that up, because once we start, and we're going to start on January 10th, you have 140 days, and really the first 60 days of that, you can't do much other than what the governor declares is an emergency. And so it's a really truncated time frame to get anything done. So the work that we do now, in the interim and then leading up to the session, is really key if you're going to get some of your priorities across the finish line. So yeah, we've certainly been doing that. I spent the better part of my summer in Uvalde when I was asked to serve on an investigatory committee into the Robb Elementary School shooting. So certainly some of my work this session is going to pivot off of the time that I spent with that community, and hoping that we can create some policies, whether it be around school safety or police accountability or gun safety. Some things that we can provide a better environment so that we are less likely to have to suffer through a tragedy like that again.
Yeah, that has obviously been one of the bigger things that has been in the lead up to this, and one that, again, you mentioned your personal involvement in some of the legislative efforts regarding this. So you have filed a number of bills specifically related to that, including along the lines of mental health resource access at schools, dealing with records in the aftermath of any kind of similar situation to what happened in Uvalde, when there is no one left to prosecute. What happens then, considering that there wouldn't be then the court processes and the public filings that usually would come across in the longer term, but still aftermath of that. And one of the major ones that you have mentioned here, just to kind of highlight the length of this process, sent out some information, some of those kind of initial declarations that it came from a decent part of the delegation in their own kind of way and means of what are some of the major bills. And that was a month ago, more than a month ago, as we are recording this. And so that's just kind of, again, showing the time frames it takes here. You had to make declarations and start filing things. Those were when some of the filing windows began, actually, kind of the immediate aftermath of the election.
Yeah, we start filing bills, I want to say it's a week after the election. And so there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 7,000 bills filed between the House and the Senate each session. I don't know, it's somewhere around there. It keeps going up, so I don't know what it'll be this time around. But it's a process that is the quicker that you can get something in the queue and start working out the problems, if there are any with it, the better chance you have of getting it across the finish line. So filing those bills early is good for a couple of reasons. Your bills will get referred to committees sooner rather than later, because they refer them in numerical order, but also allows for your conversations to publicly happen a little bit earlier. So if there are some issues and things that you need to resolve, you can kind of start moving those out of the way quicker.
And to that point as well, one of the bills you filed, again, in reference to Uvalde and the situation there, titled now HB 22, would have a little bit more impact and focus on specifically notification of local law enforcement of, again, pointing to some of the situations that have come out from the investigation of Uvalde of, recent local purchases of large amounts of essentially firearms and ammunition, right?
Yes. So what the situation specifically in Uvalde, it had an 18-year-old that amassed an enormous arsenal in a very short period of time. Now, I do believe that we should raise the age to purchase those. That's another issue, and it's one that we're going to discuss. Some people that don't think that we have the votes to do something like that, but I think we should. This attacker in that situation actually was thwarted by the law we had on the books. He tried to purchase things prior to turning 18, try to get other people to purchase them for him, and was thwarted. And so my guess is if we had a law that said 21, maybe you've got 3 more years to maybe figure out a way to intervene in this man's life and maybe stop a tragedy. That aside, right now when weapons are purchased, so handguns, if you have multiple handgun purchases within a certain amount of time, that information is actually reported to the local sheriff. So that's something that we're doing today. But we do not do the same when we're talking about assault weapons or magazines. And the number of magazines the attacker in this case amassed was unreal. And so that's the kind of information that might be helpful to the local sheriff. Maybe that's enough information for them to step in and do something and stop a tragedy from happening. So again, this isn't stopping someone from purchasing these things. It's saying we're going to notify the local sheriff about these instances because they know their community best, and maybe there's something they can do, or maybe there's an issue that they need to intervene in that's not maybe something that's out of the norm, and you can give them that information. That information can be very powerful. So that's what the bill would do. I think it would be a great tool for law enforcement, and one that doesn't certainly curtail the rights of citizens to purchase firearms.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Joe Moody, state representative for District 78 out of El Paso. If you want to find out any more information about him, there's, of course, the house.texas.gov and the website associated there. Is there any other place that you would like people to come and visit you, on the social media, etc., if you want to find out more information about kind of what's going on, the progression of the session, particularly as we get into that fast and furious time frame we're anticipating here?
Well, I don't have a TikTok yet, but I've been told that I need to do something about that. But right now, I'm in kind of a normal channels. I'm on Facebook, and my handle there is Moody for El Paso, spelled out FOR, and on Twitter as well, Moody for El Paso. So those are the main channels that can kind of talk through some of the things that are going on in session. You'll also get a pretty good dose of what my children are doing if you follow me on those sites. So.
Fair enough. I do recall seeing very similar type things going by there.
They keep me very busy. So, you do get a little bit of my bad parenting jokes probably as well.
Fair enough here. And so stepping back into the Uvalde thing at least one more time here, one of the major issues that is still technically, again, as we are recording, ongoing has been about records access and getting into the details, and not even just as a public information, the kind of things that I or colleagues would be filing, but even law enforcement and legislatively speaking, the amount of information that has been maybe not totally obfuscated, but difficult to track down. That's maybe not totally, but at least in part what you're going to when you're having another bill that has been filed in regards to it about what happens to, again, records opening up to the public after situations like this, when there is, again, no one left to prosecute because of either how the law enforcement response goes or what the a suspected and alleged perpetrator does in their own case. That makes it so that it wouldn't go through the usual kind of court process in which a lot of information would enter the public record, so to speak here. So what are you focused on there?
Yeah, so this is actually an effort that we've been working on for a few different few sessions in a row. But the tragedy in Uvalde kind of crystallizes why we need to address this, right? So one of the largest problems we've had in the wake of that tragedy is the flow of information, what people know, what's accurate, what's inaccurate. We've seen multiple instances of inaccurate information being essentially being put out into the public sphere and no ability to check that. And there's a lack of trust. When we went to that community to conduct our investigation, to say that there was little to no trust in government actors at that point is probably an understatement. So it was a very difficult environment to wade into, because the goal was to give some stability of facts to these families, to these community members, so they can understand and start to move forward. You can't create accountability unless you have a good set of facts to sit on. So there's an exception in our public information law, and it says if you're not finally convicted or you're not put on deferred adjudication, your records don't have to be made public. Now that is a very good exception, because what's meant to say, hey, if you were dragged through the legal process but nothing really happened, you didn't really do anything, and nothing ever came of it, why should that be public information? And so that to me was to protect the rights of the accused, and that was the reason we had that exception. However, in the instance when someone dies in police custody, or like you saw what happened in Uvalde, is killed at the end of that, his assault on that school, there are no charges that will be brought. He will never be convicted because he's deceased. And there's something they call the dead suspect loophole. And increasingly, law enforcement and governmental agencies have been using that loophole, that exception, to close public information on cases where someone is killed or dies in custody. And so this is one of those examples that crystallizes why we need to eliminate that loophole. Public trust needs to be restored. And I am someone that is a very big believer in protecting the sanctity of an investigation, and that's important. But at some point you turn the corner and the public gets to scrutinize that process. The government belongs to the people. That's the way that this society works. And if you don't have that public information available to them, it's hard for them to understand what needs to change, if anything, about the way that their government operates. So it's important to close that loophole, and we're going to continue to work on that.
Well, at least some of the other major priorities you have as well. I mean, I'm sure these conversations will dominate in their own way, but some of the other things that you're focused on, at least with some of your initial bill filings as well, will be kind of on larger criminal justice reform efforts, including death penalty reform, youth justice, and one that we have definitely talked about in the past, that of cannabis decriminalization. What are some of those focuses there that you have for this upcoming session? In
a world where there seems to be more of a partisan divide and maybe a growing chasm between the parties, the world of criminal justice reform seems to not fit that mold. You have Republicans and Democrats work on these issues. In fact, during the interim, the Speaker of the House created a new study committee, the Criminal Justice Reform Study Committee, that was chaired by Republican Jeff Leach out of Plano, vice chaired by myself. And so it was mirroring the efforts that we made as a criminal justice reform caucus, which is a caucus that we created a couple of years ago that is entirely bipartisan, an equal number of Republicans and Democrats. And so those are, these are the opportunities that we really try to seize on to work together. And we may come to these issues from different perspectives, but we get to the point where we know that there are things in our system that need to change, including some inequities in capital punishment. Myself and some other members spent some time on the women's death row earlier this year, trying to help intervene and advocate for Melissa Lucio, who we believe was convicted of a crime that ultimately she didn't commit. Now, the Court of Appeals has since agreed with us, and they've sent that back to the trial court. So as some of those bills are directly tied to the issues that we have with capital punishment, and making sure that if the state's going to take someone's life, you want to make sure that that system is free from error. Now, I am a believer that it's impossible to free it from all error, but we can do our best. That we can do our best in the meantime. Ultimately, I don't know that we should have capital punishment in the state of Texas, but if we're going to have it, there are certainly some things we need to do to change it, make it a system that we can trust. On top of that, cannabis reform is something I've worked on for many sessions and is an extremely popular concept on both sides of the aisle, and I anticipate that we'll be able to get that bill finally to the governor's desk this year to reduce penalties for both leaf cannabis and concentrate cannabis. It is so heavily bipartisan, the push on that bill, that I think its time has come, and so I'm looking forward to that. And then the other on youth justice, you have a population of kids that were certified as adults, which we allowed to be done in this state, and they were tried as adults and sentenced to some, mostly during the 90s, some very, very harsh, lengthy sentences, without the ability to have a second look and to come to parole eligibility, or at least parole eligibility earlier. So the second look bill is to give some of those offenders, you're talking about 14, 15, 16-year-olds that were certified as adults, give the parole board an opportunity to look at them a little bit earlier. Doesn't mean they're going to get released, but give them an opportunity rather than have them sit for 40 years. 40 years for most is a life sentence in the prison system. So that is a bill that is built on some court cases and also just notions of justice and mercy.
Again, guest right now is Joe Moody, Texas representative, a Democrat for the 78th district here in El Paso, talking about the upcoming 88th session of the Texas legislature. Got to take that next break right now, but coming out of this break, continue our conversation with him about some of the other major priorities, including some more locally facing legislation that is pending and will be up for discussion here, while some of the overarching topics and other major events that he has commented on going on in our region. So stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. The U.S. Supreme Court has halted the lift of Title 42. Governor Abbott made the announcement on Twitter this afternoon. It was set to expire on December 21st. This afternoon, the El Paso County Judge, Ricardo Samaniego, will also be holding a news conference regarding the migrant crisis. This comes after El Paso Mayor Oscar Leeser declared a state of emergency on Saturday. Meantime, the El Paso ISD says the district will be providing facilities to shelter migrants to help the city. At the moment, it's unclear which El Paso ISD facilities will be used to shelter migrants, presumably buildings owned by the district that are not being used. There is no confirmation of that yet. It's unclear if the vacant schools will be used. 17-year-old Juan Ortiz was arrested and accused of shooting and killing his mother on Friday night. Police found Ortiz had shot his mother with a shotgun after an argument and fled the scene after the shooting. He was arrested Sunday at the Paso del Norte port of entry as he tried to cross back into El Paso. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
We have an accident at Gateway Boulevard south of North Yarborough Drive. We also have an accident at Mesa Street and Texas Avenue. Your alternates are going to be Missouri Avenue and Campbell Street. And we have an accident at Fabian Street and Main Street. Your alternates are going to be Camp Street and Loop Drive. I'm Nia Allen, and that was your El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We're starting off our work week looking fairly cool, but nothing big to really splash about. But there is a much larger Arctic air mass that is diving through the Central Plains and eventually will arrive in our area as we get to Thursday night and into Friday. A stark difference in our temperatures as we can expect some very cold air to arrive along with some winds. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
Once upon a time, a tornado ripped through an Alabama community. But we'll bring you the story of a family who lost their house, but didn't lose their home. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The bicycles, the toy fire trucks, Instead of giving gifts that kids will outgrow, invite grandparents and friends to contribute to your child's future with the UNest app. UNest allows parents to create an investment account for their kids that makes it easy to gift funds that can be used for college tuition, a first car, and more, just by sharing a link. To get started, download the UNest app from the App Store or Google Play. See terms and conditions at unest.co. That's UNEST.co.
New on Curiosity Stream, from predicting volcanic eruptions to alligator blood that could save human lives.
We're already getting science data that's never been seen before.
The year's best scientific news and breakthroughs on top science stories of 2022. Plus, gazelles in the Old Testament, whales in the Gospel. We're well beyond fish and donkeys here. It's the old world creatures you'd never expect to find in Holy Scripture on Animals of the Bible. Watch now on Curiosity Stream. And for a limited time, get 40% off our annual plan. That's just $1 a month. Visit CuriosityStream.com.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Did you know that there's a Christmas tradition that started in a gas station? Well, it's the Hess Toy Trucks, and it's been around for nearly half a century. We'll bring you their story in this week's edition of Our American Stories, on the iHeart Radio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This report is sponsored by the Our American Stories podcast.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on these days, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of conversations going on there. A lot of people chiming in, dropping those likes and reactions. We do appreciate Monica Cervantes, Ida Beza Gardner, Robbie Flores, Flaco Jimenez, James Holmes, and Amber Banda. Do appreciate that. With some other conversations going on about the merits, or conversation about how are some of those points that have been brought up so far. Again, a lot more of today's news we'll be getting into a little bit later in the program beyond those updates. Yes, we got Title 42, border security and immigration issues, updates, as well as what's going on with the elections and disaster declarations. Yeah, it's a jam-packed day, but still want to take a step back as we are getting closer to that holiday season and talk more about what will be coming up with the legislative session. So again, was able to continue our conversation with State Rep Joe Moody in order to break down a little bit further what some of the bigger themes during the session will be, as well as his response to some of those other stories we've been following, including the border security immigration situation, as well as what is going on with the district attorney's office, that whole thing. Some notable comments we had talked about from him. So here's the continuation of the interview. Enjoy. Joining me back here in studio via phone is Joe Moody, Texas State Representative, representing District 78 as a Democrat for El Paso. Thank you very much for sticking around with us.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me.
So we've been talking about, of course, the lead up to the 88th legislative session for Texas. Anyone wondering about that number is thinking, wow, why so low? It's because of the way Texas does it, because we have this one frantic, roughly half year every 2 years of legislation, and this one has a lot of impetus on it and a lot of different factors. I mean, no two sessions are ever alike, in my opinion, and ever since I've been paying attention to this kind of stuff here professionally or personally. And I want to take a moment here. We were mentioning some of the overarching bills that you have put forth on dealing with some major issues statewide. There are a few, of course, more than a few, very locally focused ones, including a few involving the Texas Tech University Health Sciences Center, dental school, the Weiler Aerial Tramway, and behavioral health in the area, right?
Yeah, for us, and we talked about some of our overarching issues, some of the broader policy things that we work on as members, and other members of the delegation do the same thing. They, my area kind of wade into a lot of criminal justice reform issues, and other members do other things. But then there's the El Paso specific agenda, and that's the stuff that we make sure that we are all, singing from the same hymnal and doing everything we can to push every single lever, because we are, we're a small delegation, but in the last several sessions, I think we've punched above our weight. And so we need to continue to do that. And part of that is continuing to develop our state resources that we have here. You mentioned the dental school. We got authorization for the my first dental school in Texas, and gosh, I don't know how long, decades. And having one on the border is a huge game changer. But we, like anybody, like any other institution, when you bring more assets to the institution, you need more space, and so a true building for that dental school would be amazing. That's certainly on our list to do. We know that the Weiler aerial tramway has been a gem of the Texas Parks and Wildlife system, but it was never meant to be for for the use that we were using it for. It really wasn't what it was utilized for, and unfortunately, because of some liability issues, was taken offline a couple of years ago, and has given us the opportunity to reimagine it and redo it in a way that is meant for visitors, is meant for those spectacular sightseeing, trips up and down the mountain. So we've gotten over $10 million appropriated to that project already, and we're going to go back in the session and look for probably 10 to 20 million more, so we can get that project up and running. Always looking to help UTEP, and they've been working on advanced manufacturing and aerospace engineering, so that's something we'll always continue working with them. Their pharmacy school is one that we need to continue to keep an eye on. And then we have certainly noticed in the recent years with the August 3rd shooting, with COVID and with other things, that we do have some gaps in our behavioral health system here, particularly with youth. And so we're going to work on getting some planning dollars for the El Paso Behavioral Health Center so that we can build that out to where it needs to be, so it has the capacity that it needs, and that's actually in line with what people are doing in other parts of the state. And so our sentiment is it's El Paso's turn to get in the queue. Let's look at our shortages. Let's look at our needs, and there's money available for this. So let's get in line so that we can do the development to help with our behavioral health needs as well.
So important local focuses that are going to be part of the session, but there are a lot of, even beyond some of your bigger topics, also the more statewide focuses as well. Some things that are going to be already a part of the conversation. Two major points I want to make there. One is that there is this surplus, as we kind of mentioned a couple of times, the 20 plus billion, I think 27 billion at last estimate will become clear once we get into session, I do believe. And that is going to kind of add a little bit of a spice, so to speak, to I feel like most of the proceedings for this session, because whenever you got a very large pie like that, and the thousands of bills that are going to be filed, going to be in regards to that, might change some of the aspects with it, I gotta say here. But then when it comes to, of course, some of the major priorities that, of course, we mentioned some of the governor's emergency items. He has set forth some of those already, and I'm sure there'll be more conversations going on there. But in addition, there's also been the priority set forth by Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, that sure, he oversees the Senate side of things. You're, of course, on the House of it. And there has been interesting interactions in the past between even the most recent Speaker of the House, Republican Dade Phelan, and Dan Patrick, Lieutenant Governor. I mean, they're certainly going to have some impact on this session. So on these kind of overarching systems, starting specifically with that surplus, what do you expect is going to come from that for this session?
Well, it certainly is. It does create a different layer of conversation. When there's no money, the session gets a little bit simpler. No is the easier answer to give, right? When you've got a surplus, and now it's now the question about what are we going to prioritize? Where are these funds best spent? And there's going to be a large debate. You're going to hear both sides, and people have different ideas. And I say both sides, I mean both sides of the building, not both sides of the parties. You have a Senate view of how we do property tax reform, for example, and a House view of how we do that. What we do on healthcare expansion. I know the Speaker has been pretty big on expanding healthcare to new and expectant mothers. And in the wake of the most recent maternal mortality and morbidity report, it's certainly something that we need to do, and those dollars are available. So let's put them in a place that's going to do the most good. So there's going to be a number of competing items for those funds. Border security is also one that people speak about very loudly in terms of infrastructure and investment. So I imagine that'll be part of the conversation as well. So I look at this as an opportunity to really build into the infrastructure of our state going forward, whether that's broadband, whether that's water, whether that's roads. When you have these types of surpluses, that's where the dollar is best spent. Or even looking at our human capital, what do we do to continue to address the COVID issue in our schools? Right, there is an educational gap that's going to exist for a cohort of students that we need to continue to understand and address. And some of that is going to be what types of services are we offering on campuses. So those are the things that are facing us, the challenges facing us. But I always look at challenges as opportunities as well. So those are some of the things I know that we'll be kind of staring at head on come January.
Again, if you're just joining us, guest right now is Joe Moody, state representative for the Texas Legislature, House of Representatives, representing District 78 as a Democrat out of El Paso. Again, any more information about him, there's, of course, his state website, house.texas.gov, where you can find him and all the other representatives for our area, as well as major bills, other things, if you want to do the deep dive, but also find him over on social media, primarily under Joe for Moody for El Paso, spelled F-O-R, El Paso there. So some of those priorities, of course, that have been kind of the more overarching ones, including, there's been a lot of talk about, reimagining, rebuilding, because, there's more gas in the tank, so to speak, this time around. And some of the ones that are really being focused on, among other things, is going to be such as, property tax reform. That is something that both the governor and lieutenant governor have mentioned specifically, again, particularly in light of that surplus amount here, though there are some other ones as well, including, election laws. But I think that the property tax one is one of the ones that has come down both, again, from the governor and lieutenant governor as important, even if there's, again, between the chambers and even between sides of the governor's office, the lieutenant governor and the governor, that is, maybe not some total agreement. So it seems like even though there's a strong direction of agenda laid out when it comes to the top level here, the exact route to be taken toward it isn't necessarily as clear by my reckoning.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's a good point to make as we go through the session. And so, people in the Capitol world refer to them as the big three: the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker. Governor and lieutenant governor are elected statewide. Their constituency resides, with the people across the state. The House is very different. The dynamic there is different in that the speaker's power comes from the members that elect them. All right, they're a House member just like me. They represent the same amount of people back home. Dave Phelan is a state representative from Beaumont. We always make a joke that we're kind of bookends. He's got the mile marker, or he's got that sign out in his district that says El Paso 800 something miles away, and I got the sign in my district that says Beaumont 800 something miles away. So we are very, very far apart, but we serve the same amount of people. Difference being is that we elevate one of our own to become Speaker of the House, and that's what makes our chamber a little bit different, makes the dynamic a little bit different. And so, you take an issue like property taxes. You may have maybe the idea is to just increase the homestead exemption. That's how we're going to address this, and that's how we're going to. That's how we're going to allow people to get some relief. Well, that's one way you can do it. There are other ways you can do it through funding in public schools and driving down costs, essentially increasing the state's share of public education costs will has a net effect of driving down property taxes as well. So there's a myriad of different ways to do, if you say, I want to reduce property taxes, well, that's great. I don't think anybody's going to say, no, that's a bad idea. They say, what are you doing? What way are you going to do it? That's actually impactful. I don't think I don't think we should want to pass a bill that says we did something but doesn't effectively do that out there for folks who we represent. I think that'd be the worst outcome. So you'll see that the governor will have his idea of what that should look like. The lieutenant governor may as well, and the House will as well. And as things churn through those 140 days of session, the details get fleshed out, and sometimes those can end up in little, flashpoint arguments. But by and large, there is usually a giant deal that's brokered near the end of session where the Speaker of the House and his priorities kind of fall, they fall into this lane, the lieutenant governors fall into that lane, the governors fall into another lane, and they kind of hash things out. So everybody gets a little bit of kind of the way they wanted things to go, depending on the issue. So that's the way it's always gone since I've been there. I don't anticipate that being any different this session.
There have been a few different names for recent sessions, like in previous times there was, the Kumbaya session. There were more contentious sessions. I kind of refer to the last session as the year of the legislature, as there were all of the extended and special sessions here. It went well past that 140 days as it was. So this time around, it just kind of seems like there's a lot of anticipation, and kind of seems like it's going to be maybe not a totally frantic session, but that's the best name I can come up with in anticipation so far, just because there is, again, that extra impetus. Like you said, no is easy, yes gets complicated, and so there's gonna be a lot of scrambling. It kind of seems like what kind of sense are you getting as we're anticipating the actual start of things there at the Capitol?
You said it earlier, every session is different, and as someone who's been through, I guess this will be my 7th now, but everyone is very unique, very different. I really did enjoy the Kumbaya session. That seemed about as boring as possible, and I think that's what government should be. I think government should be relatively boring. I don't think we should be like the WWE. But this is we live in a day and age where there seems to be people want entertainment value out of their politics, which is not really the school of thought I come from. But I do sense that we're in a little bit better. Kind of better posture than we were last session. Right? When we went into the last session, we were coming out of COVID. The entire interim didn't happen. No one saw each other, hadn't talked to one another. When we started session, we were, we'd check in and check right out because no one wanted to be, we didn't have vaccines yet, right? Then we had the winter freeze. And so that took out, that was just another tragedy that took out time during the front end of the session. Then we had some very, very politically divisive topics that dominated the back end of the session. And so I don't think that we're looking at a session like that again. I think we'll definitely it's certainly not going to move towards what we saw in 2019, which is the one you refer to as the Kumbaya session, but somewhere in between is my guess. The red meat apparently is never going to go away from these sessions, and that's kind of the nature of the beast. But with the funds available that we have, gives us the ability to do some really good infrastructure building and some really good investment in our state, and that should make all of us feel very good about where we can get to.
At least one other thing I want to make sure we bring up here is, of course, that's what's been going on in terms of state level appointments. The El Paso District Attorney's Office, or the District Attorney representing El Paso, has seen its own level of upheaval on the last pick a time frame since the election, frankly. And of course, we did have the selection that was made with former El Paso Judge Bill Hicks now selected for that. You had been a part of the conversation as well, sending out your own emails and statements being made online about that as well. So now, as it has come down and we're looking at some of those initial priorities being set and being sworn in as well, those kind of things here, what is your perspective on how this is shaped out and what's to come, essentially?
The only hope we can all have is that some normalcy return, some semblance of order return to the district attorney's office until the voters of El Paso get to make a choice who's going to serve going forward. You never like to cede that away to one person, like the governor, but that's what happens when you have an abject failure like we did. That's part of the tragedy of what happened in that office, is it deprived our community of the ability to be a part of that process until a couple more years down the road. But I know Bill Hicks served with him at the district attorney's office. Is a competent lawyer, competent jurist, and my hope is until 2024 that he's able to restore some semblance of order and efficiency and some justice for this community, because that's what it sorely needs.
One last thing I want to make sure we bring up here is, of course, with us as we're recording this, anticipating events progressing at the border here. I mean, it's not going to be much that can be done from the legislative standpoint, particularly since the won't even be in session yet before we have that anticipated end of Title 42. But when it comes to, those priorities, or even just the situation that we're having on the streets of El Paso and what is being anticipated for these coming, days and weeks afterwards, what do you have to say about what's going on there and how that might impact legislation as well, particularly?
News on the hour and the traffic and weather all
so certainly
day.
there are resources that the state can provide, and our system here is being
Joining me back here in studio via phone is
News
Joe
on
Moody,
the hour
Texas State
and a half. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station. Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We have a new accident at Joe Battle Boulevard, northbound at Pebble Hills Boulevard. Your alternates are going to be Edgemere Boulevard and Saw Kleinfield Drive. We also have an accident at Highway 20 north of Yarborough Drive. Loop Drive and North Carolina Drive will be those alternates. And North Mesa Street and Texas Avenue also has an accident. I'm Nia Allen, and that was your El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
The FTX crypto story continues, and just wait until you hear what the regulators have in store next. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Is it getting harder to find new customers? After all, it's one thing to run a business and another to grow it. But what if you had access to everyone listening to me right now? Access to all the customers in your area. As the #1 audio company in America, iHeartMedia gives you access to all the customers you need to grow at a fraction of the cost of digital, video, and social advertising. Get started today. From your cell, dial pound 250 and say keyword great results. That's pound 250 and say great results.
Hey, Texas, there are approximately 950,000 individuals in Texas living with a serious mental illness, which is an individual risk factor for severe COVID-19. If you or someone you know is living with a serious mental health condition, such as schizophrenia, major depressive disorder, or bipolar disorder, make sure they know where to go this holiday season to stay safe and healthy. Visit covidvaccine.texas.gov to find resources and location information for vaccine providers near you. Stay healthy, Texas.
The El Conquistador Tucson, a Hilton resort, welcomes our neighbors from El Paso. We're your perfect staycation getaway, far enough away down I-10 with amazing hiking trails. This summer, we're knocking 20% off all food and beverage for our El Paso neighbors. HiltonElConquistador.com.
Guys, 2022's been a roller coaster year. So spoil her this Christmas by giving her the next best thing to wearing nothing at all with soft, silky, naturally nude pajamas exclusively from Pajamagram. Sensuous and smooth, naturally nude pajamas feel just like her own bare skin. Even more alluring than lingerie, the texture and touch of these pajamas is so seductive that you'll both love the feel of them. She'll love the feeling of wearing next to nothing at all, and you'll love the way they look. Best of all, Pajamagram does the wrapping for you with free gift packaging. Order today, and Pajamagram will also include a free matching naturally nude nightie with the purchase of naturally nude pajamas. That is free gift packaging and a free naturally nude nightie when you order today. Just go to Pajamagram.com. It's fast, easy, and delivery by Christmas is guaranteed. That's Pajamagram.com.
The FTX crypto story continues, and just wait until you hear what the regulators have in store next. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. Supreme Court Chief Justice Roberts is halting the lifting of Title 42 for now. Texas and other states are insisting that the court leave the Trump-era public health rule in place. It's been used to expedite deportations. In a statement, Texas Governor Greg Abbott praised the move, saying it will help prevent illegal immigration. The House committee investigating last year's attack on the Capitol is referring criminal charges against former President Trump to the Department of Justice.
The gravity of the specific offense, the severity of its actual harm, and the centrality of the offender to the overall design of the unlawful scheme to overthrow the election compel us to speak.
Maryland Congressman Jamie Raskin said the evidence is more than sufficient to make the referrals. The panel is recommending the DOJ investigate him for inciting an insurrection, conspiracy to defraud the U.S., conspiracy to make a false statement, and obstruction of an official proceeding. Meantime, House Republicans plan to investigate the January 6th committee. Republican Congressman Kevin McCarthy of California, who wants to become the next speaker, already told the panel his party will start its own inquiry once they take power in January. The market is closing with stocks lower as hope for a year-end rally fades. Natalie Migliori reports.
Fears still linger around the Federal Reserve raising rates once again and how that could lead the economy into a recession. Investors will also be watching for earnings reports later this week as both FedEx and Nike are set to report. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 163 points, the S&P 500 fell 34 points, and the Nasdaq dropped 159 points.
A man convicted of killing 8 family members in the Pike County, Ohio massacre will spend the rest of his life behind bars. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. The Senate Majority Leader is urging the FDA to investigate a shortage of children's medicine. New York Democrat Chuck Schumer is hoping the agency can expedite approvals of foreign drug manufacturers. He says basic drugs such as Tylenol, Robitussin, and ibuprofen are sometimes hard to find. There's been a huge surge in flu and RSV cases recently, as well as an uptick in coronavirus. A woman is accused of breaking into actor Robert De Niro's townhouse on Manhattan's Upper East Side. Jennifer Pulsoni reports.
Cops say 30-year-old Shanice Aviles allegedly entered the East 65th Street home around 2:45 in the morning, stealing Christmas gifts. Actor Robert De Niro was reportedly home at the time, not hurt, as Aviles was taken into custody at the scene. Police had reportedly been following her for a number of alleged robberies in the neighborhood over the past few weeks. She reportedly has more than 24 past arrests, mainly for burglary.
In today's shaky economy, Gen Xers are struggling to manage large expenses like college tuition and weddings while still planning long-term for their retirement.
Experts like Samantha Edis, founder and CEO of Park Place Payments, say contrary to what your kids or parents may ask you to do, Gen Xers need to address your own financial needs first.
You need to make sure that you have a plan for your own retirement. And that's essential because it's much better to, be someone who's a 20-year-old who has to get out student loans rather than a 70-plus-year-old who has no savings.
She adds that those who have not yet created a retirement plan are in good company, but you should start now and, if needed, start small. I'm Rebecca Hughes.
Former Bachelor host Chris Harrison is set to address his exit from the series in a new podcast. Harrison will reportedly tell his story and open up like never before on the most dramatic podcast ever with Chris Harrison. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
The FTX crypto story continues, and just wait until you hear what the regulators have in store next. I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the Borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today. For good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
I never write reviews, but Navage is so amazing, I had to leave one. Nothing's ever cleared out my sinuses as well. I'm blown away by how Navage works. That's a review from Carrie, and it's one of over 100,000 online testimonials praising Navage. I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I've talked about flushing out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs. How Navage's powered suction can help you breathe better, and how your nose is the body's air filter, and Navage will clean it out. But don't take my word for it. What do people like Chad say, who wrote, Navage has helped clear out my nasal passages every single night. My wife says my snoring has gone way down. Snorefest be gone, unquote. Navage is the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million customers to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, Target, and online. Navage, N-A-V-A-G-E. Clean nose, healthy life.
This holiday season, don't forget about you. The free iHeartRadio app is filled with everything you want to hear. And best of all, it's free. That means you can listen to this station while you're dashing out to the store because you forgot something. Again.
Gum is a stocking stuffer, right?
Or grab your headphones and escape inside a podcast for a little alone time. And finding one you love is easy. Like buying a gift card because you're out of ideas easy. Give yourself the gift that keeps giving all year long. Download the free iHeartRadio app for all the music, radio, and podcasts you love.
iHeartRadio.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days, Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter @Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. A lot of important stuff we're getting into here today, but the technical glitch there, end of last segment. So want to make sure we at least continue on what it is, that last question that we had for State Rep Joe Moody. So we're going to finish that, and then we will go ahead and open up those phone lines as we do. But just as I mentioned here, some of the major topics that are going on to you today. Yeah, the border security and immigration situation taking on new local, state, national dimensions as there has been new action both over the weekend and not too long before our program got on air today, including a disaster declaration coming from the city of El Paso. Mayor Oscar Leeser announcing that over the weekend. A stay now being ordered by the Supreme Court in terms of the removal of Title 42, the pandemic era related policies, allowing for much expedited removals, and the anticipation end of which very much leading to the events that we are dealing with here in our community, as well as more state guard troopers arriving in our area. So there's a lot to break down there, and we'll continue talking about that here. But want to make sure that we continue and finish the interview that we did have with, again, State Rep Joe Moody. The final question on that point here that I was able to ask him during our interview a little bit earlier today. One last thing I want to make sure we bring up here is, of course, with us as we're recording this, anticipating events progressing at the border here. I mean, it's not going to be much that can be done from the legislative standpoint, particularly since the won't even be in session yet before we have that anticipated end of Title 42. But when it comes to, I mean, those priorities, or even just the situation that we're having on the streets of El Paso and what is being anticipated for these coming, days and weeks afterwards, what do you have to say about what's going on there and how that might impact legislation as well, particularly?
Well, so certainly there are resources that the state can provide, and our system here is being stressed, and migrants coming across this border is not a new thing for our community, but most recent weeks have really put that to the test. So where the state can come in is a help with resources and helping to alleviate some of that, some of those pressure points and pain points that we're feeling with our services. The fear that I have is that people will use this type of use this moment to stoke fear and hatred about those that are migrating, that are immigrants to this country. And so people have done that in the past to very tragic ends, to tragic consequences. So my caution would be to understand that this is a very complicated problem, that at the end of the day, we're talking about human beings that are in a very difficult situation, and our communities that are trying to work through that at the same time. And dehumanizing people in this or vilifying people in this process will only lead to tragic result. And so that's the thing I worry about, is that we will have people continue to throw this issue into a politicized environment rather than one that we can come up with pragmatic solutions. And my hope is that cooler heads prevail, because we've seen where angry and hateful rhetoric can lead us, and it has led us to some tragic consequences in the past. And I hope that doesn't continue in this circumstance.
Again, guest right now has been Joe Moody, state representative, a Democrat representing District 78 here in El Paso for the Texas House of Representatives. Again, any more information about him, any of the topics we've talked about here, and the upcoming legislative session, again, house.texas.gov is where you can find out most of the information on him, the other representatives, as well as look for him, Moody for El Paso, FOR spelled out, over on social media, Facebook and Twitter, etc. So, Representative Moody, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us about your priorities, some of the major things coming up for this session, and things going on in this community here today.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
All right, back on track here now. And tell you what, let's just get back on it overall and go ahead and take that first break of this hour right now as we got pushed a little bit back due to some of those technical errors. But back on track, and we'll go ahead and open those phone lines as we do. So if you want to get on the line, the number to do so, open line now, 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Again, a lot of subjects to get into today, and we'll keep breaking those down. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. The number one more time, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We have a new accident at Joe Battle Boulevard, northbound at Pebble Hills Boulevard. Your alternatives are going to be Edgemere Boulevard and Salkline Hill Drive. We also have an accident at Highway 20 north of Yarborough Drive. The alternates are going to be Loop Drive and North Carolina Drive. And Mesa Street and Texas Avenue also has an accident. I'm Mia Allen, El Paso Traffic.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
To hear good old-fashioned storytelling, listen to Red Pilled America, where this week we tell the remarkable story of how a 1,500-year-old saint transformed into the jolly old soul from the North Pole. Listen to Red Pilled America on the iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
Nancy Grace here. Big news. Brand new cold case podcast, Zone 7 with Cheryl McCollum. You get to work a cold case with investigator Cheryl McCollum, family members, detectives, trusted criminal justice pros who make up her, quote, Zone 7.
This ain't just a podcast, honey, but a war room.
Listen to Zone 7 with Cheryl McCollum now on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Want to get 7 streaming services for the price of 1? Sign up for a smart bundle that'll stimulate your brain. Featuring Curiosity Stream with the best documentary films and TV shows. Nebula for thought-provoking content from your favorite creators. And One Day University with the best lectures from the country's top professors. And so much more. It's perfect for families with all kinds of interests. And great content for kids. It also makes a perfect holiday gift. Now at 40% off, get all 7 services for only $3.50 a month. Sign up now at smartbundle.com.
Did you know that driving under the influence of marijuana is illegal? And if you drive while you're high, law enforcement can definitely tell. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
Guys, listen to this. The ultimate holiday surprise for her. Naturally new pajamas, exclusively from Pajamagram. More alluring than lingerie, feels like wearing next to nothing at all. Are an exciting gift, one you both can enjoy. Right now, when you go to Pajamagram.com to purchase naturally nude pajamas, you'll get a naturally nude nightie for free. Save $75 and ensure delivery before Christmas. Go to Pajamagram.com now.
Did you know that driving under the influence of marijuana is illegal? And if you drive while you're high, law enforcement can definitely tell. If you feel different, you drive different. Drive high, get a DUI. Paid for by NHTSA.
Teens in foster care will love you, even if you don't know the lingo.
Dad bod, noun. The result of the occasional donut, always washed down with confidence.
Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Adopt U.S. Kids, and the Ad Council. Visit adoptuskids.org.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we're up on these days. A lot to get into there. We do have that phone line open, full up at the moment here, as we're back on track and taking those calls now. If you want to squeeze in a little bit later, 915-544-5876, 5 for KTSM. A lot to get into today. Again, over the weekend, disaster declaration from the city of El Paso and a news conference that started right as we went on air today. So hopefully we get some highlights of that here for y'all shortly, or at the very least, definitely tomorrow, from other community leaders and the county specifically. So a lot more to come there, as well as, again, that headline news for today affecting us directly here in the borderland of what is going on. Supreme Court ordering a stay to the end of Title 42. Whether or not that has much impact on the tide we're already experiencing of humanity in this area of people crossing the border and all the things that go along with that. Definitely still ongoing there here. One, just as much as there are many different perspectives on this here, I think it'd be an important point to be made about, well, if they have money, why can't they spend it? We're not talking about tourists here. We're not talking about people thinking like, oh, well, the laws have changed. This seems like a fine time to go and spend a delightful little weekend camped outside in sub-zero temperatures in the southern United States. I mean, we're talking about desperate people and people who are coming from a variety of different situations, none of them good, because who the hell would choose this if they had other options? Essentially, this is a very desperate kind of situation, and the situation's putting us in here in the borderland is not exactly good either. As I mean, we don't want to see people dead on the streets here that this kind of thing leads to. So anyone trying to spin on this here as a, oh no, it's fine, or oh no, it's the worst thing ever experienced, there's a lot of problems with it here. And if you have a problem with showing compassion for people in these situations, got to wonder about your own humanity there, but good luck with it in your own right. Let's get to those phone lines again. We do have Frankie and Messia on the line with us here right now. Frankie, thanks for joining us.
All right, right out of the box. Ha ha, hee hee, ho ho. They're coming to take them away again. Ha ha, hee hee, ho ho, ha ha. And the rest of it, whatever it is. That, what they had, the J6 committee, was so devastating. You have got to be from another planet not to believe that this moron, and I'm talking to Donnie Dotar Doofus, is the worst American human being on the entire history of the United States of America. I hope he goes and is sentenced to Guantanamo or even Rikers Island. Or, I'll tell you one more, the best one is that place in the Bahamas, Fox Hill, someplace like that. This moron needs to be held accountable for the disaster he is and what he attempted to do to overthrow the United States of America. This guy is a disaster, and he's from New York, of all places, where I'm originally from. He is a disaster and a disgusting human being. That's all I want to say about that.
I mean, yeah, you're talking about the recommendations that the January 6th committee has formally put into place, recommending criminal prosecution, referring it rather to the Justice Department here, which I guess I'm not surprised about, though. Still kind of from the beginning here, I guess that would have been like the starting point here. I would have taken if I was actually wanting to deal with consequences, because I mean, this is kind of the ultimate act, the final thing that the January 6th committee can do. It all has been there's so much window dressing, and I do have to wonder if they're talking about evidence being gathered and now being shown here, how much of it may have been essentially compromised. Because if you're wanting investigation, I mean, how many times do you hear from any actual law enforcement agency of, we will not comment on pending investigations until it's done? That's essentially been the complete opposite for these January 6th committees. So I think very much it's been a public purpose going along with that, and we'll see if the rubber does hit the road from this point here. Though, of course, it's worth noting that there are other active investigations, primarily around like the situations involving classified materials, among other things, going on into the former president himself here. There are other things going on to his agencies and companies, etc., but not necessarily coming down to necessarily on actually him. So those are some of the important notes, I feel, context around this whole situation.
All right. Well, you could look at it 14 different ways to Sunday, Andrew. But I mean, okay. Look, I mean, the J6 committee was investigative. They don't have any law enforcement power. Okay. The point is, he did it, and he's a horrible person. Having said that, I just want to say, Title 42, Supreme Court put a hold on it, and good for them. Now, I feel so bad. I saw those pictures of all those folks coming across El Paso, Ciudad Juarez. I feel bad about that, but I told you this once before. You cannot sustain a country if you just open up borders for every slime ball that wants to come in. That's all I want to say, and I want have a good day, okay?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
Hey, keep me on because there's a stupid static again.
Fair enough. See what we can do for you there, but thanks very much for the call. Do appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, and I think we have time for at least one more call here in this segment. We do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, right out of the box. I need to voice a correction to something Joe Moody said.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, we do not report multiple handgun sales to the sheriff. They are reported to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. 2 or more handguns purchased within 5 consecutive business days is reported to be ATF.
Yeah, I've actually had cause in the past to fill that one out myself here. I believe it's ATF form 3310.4 if we're going to get just stupidly specific about it here. I was kind of surprised when it came up because I don't usually have much of a circumstance, but it ended up happening that way. So it was interesting. So I'm aware of a mechanism here, but I will say, yeah, that is definitely an ATF form. Wasn't aware of any other kind of downstream reporting, so to speak. So I guess that tracks with my own personal experience.
Yes. And like I said, I don't know how much good it's going to do. We don't enforce the laws anyway. We just let criminals out, cashless bond in some jurisdictions.
That is true here. And actually, one further correction to make, according to that ATF form, I just pulled it up here, that ATF form, what's the actual number here, that 3310.4, it does say on item number 7, subsection B, that who the copies are supposed to be given to. Copy 1 is given to the ATF as part of their processing, but copy 2 is to be given to the chief local law enforcement official, which is your local or state official designated to receive this form, which usually in Texas ends up being the sheriff.
Yes, that's true. That's very true. I stand corrected on that portion. But like I said, how much can the local sheriff do?
I think, again, it's a information kind of thing. So if it's going to be kept in that vein, I mean, some of the things, just doing a quick reading over it here, never really had cause to study this form before it coming up here, and you further bringing it up, is that it is specifically in due to provisions under the Brady Handgun Violence Prevention Act. So I think it would be in that vein with some maybe some Texas modifications being made to it here, which makes me wonder exactly what can be done, given that this is a federal form, federal investigation. So I guess that'll be part of the conversation if it ends up coming up and making it onto the floor for this Texas legislative session. That House Bill 22, I do believe it was.
Right. Well, there's like I said, that copy may go to the local law enforcement head over here, but like I said, I don't think there's much they can do because Brady was ruled unconstitutional, and the feds cannot be enforcing. Local law enforcement cannot be enforcing federal statutes.
Yep. Again, I think that'll be an interesting point to keep an eye on as we get into this legislative session. But it was a further point you wanted to make, right?
Pardon me?
There was another point that we got a little bit sidetracked here, I think, but there was another point you wanted to make, right?
Yes, concerning migrants, yes. And I understand Bill Moody's, concern, about vilifying these migrants. Okay, and I'll put the law enforcement aspect aside and this and that. From the humanitarian point, we wouldn't be in this situation if Biden hadn't opened the doors. He not only opened the door, he took the door off the hinges. And unless we get Mexico to cooperate with us and close the southern border and not let these people in, you're going to have these individuals out on the street. One incident I saw this morning: 7-year-old kid with his family. About a 5-year-old kid with his family. 7 o'clock this morning. He could barely stand the cold.
The humanitarian issues are egregious that we are dealing with in this issue here. And I've seen some interesting analysis, particularly about the effectiveness of Title 42 as a policy. And that's, essentially what it came down to during the Trump administration. There was the, migrant protection protocols, MPP, so-called Remain in Mexico policy that had been more or less put in place before that point. I mean, it's because it gets a little bit murky about what's actually been enforced and what's measured. But when it came down to it being mostly the Title 42, there's been, evidence about there being increasing amount of encounters each time, because my contention has been most of this time that the Title 42 is a Band-Aid at best, and maybe a Band-Aid on like an arterial wound and more reality, because it is barely staunching anything and kind of just kicking the can down the road. I've actually had cause to talk with some individuals that I happen to know and be familiar with, so I'm not going to identify them because they want to be able to speak officially, but I just want to ask about their personal experiences. And essentially the fact of the matter is that some of them out there that I've talked with have had it where being and particularly in these current circumstances we're looking at, where they're talking about encountering and dealing with them and their like small team, hundreds of people a day in the current circumstances, that even prior to this, they've had it be where they will either recognize individuals or have individuals recognize them, saying like, oh yeah, you're the one who apprehended me last time, how you doing, kind of situation. So this whole just push it back across has not been a solution. It's been, at the very least, Patrick star.gif insert here, take the problem and push it over here. I do think you hit on a pretty important point there, that the cooperation of Mexico is key in this, because dictating policy to them there's the arguments to be made about how it worked during the Trump administration, but again, I think that really, it was never going to be a long-term solution of just dictating to them, because it was always going to be what are they actually willing to put forth with. And that's why I think what we're kind of reaping that during this, because the Biden administration has not been very much, at least being willing to be as forceful with the Mexican government that way. And if you call that the wrong tact, I guess there's a point of argument to be made there. But the fact of the matter is that them limiting those who can be returned and who they're willing to deal with, and them kind of shifting their own southern border policies, have been serious and very much impacting on the situation. So if we don't have that buy-in from the Mexican government, I don't think we're going to be finding any serious long-term solutions.
Well, once again, put the door back on the hinges and put pressure on Mexico. Take away their foreign aid, and let's see what that's done. I don't hear any of that, and yet these shelters are full. And like I said, I go downtown quite a bit, and I see these kids and these people freezing on the street. And by golly, it's not going to get any better at the end of this week. Friday, we're looking at a substantial drop in temperatures. This whole situation, Andrew, is asinine.
The fact that it's gotten to this point here with as much as there has been, there have been other court decisions out about even the end of the MPP, which has been sought by the Biden administration, that may be back not on hold. The fact of the matter is that it does not seem that this administration has been in the driver's seat, not in the, okay, we are going to be more proactive in this situation. Reaction has been kind of the rule, not the exception, unfortunately. And I don't feel if we're going to be seeing a change to that we're going to be seeing much solutions really evident in our area anytime in the near to even like medium-term future.
Now, Andrew, this administration is not even in the parking lot, and that's what you get when you elect a president who is a mushroom. But anyway, I turn the mic back over to you.
I appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there.
Likewise.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and take that next break right now, and a lot of other conversation going on there, including more about what CBP officers and personnel are calling for here. We'll get more into that and more with the calls. Got to take that next break right now. Again, don't want to get in trouble with anyone for missing or getting backlogged at any more here. So taking that break, if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. The U.S. Supreme Court has halted the lift of Title 42. Governor Abbott made the announcement on Twitter this afternoon. It was set to expire on December 21st. This afternoon, the El Paso County Judge, Ricardo Samaniego, will also be holding a news conference regarding the migrant crisis. This comes after El Paso Mayor Oscar Leeser declared a state of emergency on Saturday. Meantime, the El Paso ISD says the district will be providing facilities to shelter migrants to help the city. At the moment, it's unclear which El Paso ISD facilities will be used to shelter shelter migrants, presumably buildings owned by the district that are not being used. There is no confirmation of that yet. It's unclear if the vacant schools will be used. 17-year-old Juan Ortiz was arrested and accused of shooting and killing his mother on Friday night. Police found Ortiz had shot his mother with a shotgun after an argument and fled the scene after the shooting. He was arrested Sunday at the Paso del Norte port of entry as he tried to cross back into El Paso. I'm Erica Castillo with his KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
We have a new accident northbound at Tierra Este Road, south of Pebble Hills Boulevard. We also have an accident at Joe Battle Boulevard, northbound at Pebble Hills Boulevard. The alternates are going to be Edgemere Boulevard and Saul Kleinfield Drive. And we have an accident at Highway 20, north of Yarborough Drive. The alternates are going to be Loop Drive and North Carolina Drive. I'm Nia Allen, El Paso Traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, this is Chief Meteorologist Sandra Diaz. We're starting off our work week looking fairly cool, but nothing big to really splash about. But there is a much larger Arctic air mass that is diving through the Central Plains and eventually will arrive in our area as we get to Thursday night and into Friday. A stark difference in our temperatures as we can expect some very cold air to arrive along with some winds. Log on to kfoxtv.com for your latest forecast.
This report is sponsored by Lowe's. At Lowe's, every pro is an MVP to us. MVP's Pro Rewards members visit Lowe's now and earn bonus points on select products and brands like Power Pro. Then redeem for Lowe's e-gift cards and more. Offer valid through 1/8/23. Bonus points calculated before taxes and fees after applicable discounts, if any. Subject to program terms. Points expire 12/31/23.
Hey, Texas, did you know that individuals living with serious mental illness are more susceptible to severe COVID-19? Visit covidvaccine.texas.gov for vaccination resources to help reduce the risk and keep yourself and your fellow Texans informed and protected this holiday season. Stay healthy, Texas.
Guys, 2022's been a roller coaster year, so spoil her this Christmas by giving her the next best thing to wearing nothing at all with soft, silky, naturally nude pajamas exclusively from Pajamagram. Sensuous and smooth, naturally nude pajamas feel just like her own bare skin. Even more alluring than lingerie, the texture and touch of these pajamas is so seductive that you'll both love the feel of them. She'll love the feeling of wearing next to nothing at all, and you'll love the way they look. Best of all, Pajamagram does the wrapping for you with free gift packaging. Order today, and Pajamagram will also include a free matching naturally nude nightie with the purchase of naturally nude pajamas. That is free gift packaging and a free naturally nude nightie when you order today. Just go to pajamagram.com. It's fast, easy, and delivery by Christmas is guaranteed. That's pajamagram.com.
To hear good old-fashioned storytelling, listen to Red Pilled America, where this week we tell the remarkable story of how a 1,500-year-old saint transformed into the jolly old soul from the North Pole. Listen to Red Pilled America on the iHeartRadio app. That's Red Pilled America.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk. Comments can come in through all of those here, and dropping those likes and reacts primarily on the Facebook. You have Amber Banda, James Holmes, Flaco Jimenez, Robbie Flores, Ida Beza Gardner, and Monica Cervantes, not to miss out on some of those over on the other pages, including RJ on the YouTube, saying CBP leaders have said they don't need extra personnel, equipment, etc. They need a change in policy, and they can secure the border, period. Don't think I'm not interested in a change in policy, because the fact that we keep getting whittled down to, okay, sure, we have the base level immigration laws about how, removal or immigration, asylum hearings are supposed to be heard. But the fact of the matter is that we have had issues, frankly, almost ever since 40 years ago, when the last set of them were really passed, almost seemed to be, at least looking back through the records before my time, make no mistake, of being problems and not as responsive. One of those other points that has come up here is that the way our system is built out as it stands is not at all what we need in this current situation. And again, this is not even just my opinion, but demonstrable when it comes to looking at the systems, the way that the courts, the even just individual facilities, the holding cells, etc., are designed is not suited to what we are dealing with. So we are looking at systematic change being needed in it here. So do not get me wrong, very much in favor of that, anything being done when it comes to that, and us just not continuing to say, yeah, status quo isn't quite broken enough for us to have to do anything about it. But I also got to say, given the situation we are literally seeing here with, some of the averages that we are seeing day by day, it was estimated of about, 2,000 per day, give or take last week. And with, again, all that being prelude to the potential end for Title 42, again, I think Wednesday is still going to be an inflection point here. I really don't see that going any other way because that concept has been so locked in. And unless there is one hell of a marketing campaign, I'm talking about like skywriting and leaflet drops at this point is what I think it would take. And I don't think that's going to happen. Don't think that I'm saying, it'll be taken care of, because I think I've said it since last week that even with this Supreme Court stay being put into place on the end of Title 42, I don't see that really changing the situation we are going to be experiencing here much. So again, definitely need policy change. That much given guaranteed. I'm not aware of anyone that's like, no, this is working perfectly, so let it keep going. This is a temporary, we'll accept, unless you think that this is a tourism opportunity, which apparently has been expressed out there, which is just such an asinine opinion. I don't even know where to begin. But everyone is saying we need to change something about it, make it more responsive, deal with what we are actually seeing on the ground. And well, if we can actually see consensus on that, I will be happy and probably a little bit surprised given the intransigence that's happened up to this point here. Anyway, let's go ahead and get back to those phone lines now. We do have, get to my list here, Ben on the east side with us right now. Ben, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew, right out of the box.
Mhm.
I can't believe it. I actually agree with Lucia Frankie about open borders. Anybody that allows their borders to be open deserves more or less what we get. I'm listening to Joe Moody, his last statement saying, we don't want these things to lead to tragic events. I'm sorry, Mr. Moody. I think we've already got tragic events. We've got where are our leaders? Where are our representatives? The mayor wouldn't declare emergency until just over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
We got humanitarian crisis. How about the humanitarian crisis at our border, where our citizens, the citizens of the United States, are now afraid to go outside their house at night and enjoy the freedoms of the United States because they're afraid of people that are jumping over their fences and trashing their yards and things of that sort, and scaring older people that are that are inside the house, not knowing whether or not the next person that comes in knocks on their door is going to knock down the door and either kill them or do something dastardly to them. Where's the humanitarian crisis for our citizens?
Okay, so I will say that I'm not aware of any incidents like that happening as of this
It's not
point
happened
here.
yet.
I'm not
will.
aware of yet. I can understand that there may be some out there that are concerned about it, but a little bit closer to what has happened, there was more reporting and people I was seeing posting about it, about kind of the juxtaposition, because of course the Winterfest celebrations are going on in downtown El Paso right now. The lights and the San Jacinto Plaza and all those kind of things here, and within blocks, walking distance of that, we have had the people kind of along the fence near Duranguito and the demolition area where people were camped out for lack of place to go here. So that's been more of what I've been aware of about when it comes to humanitarian issues. So I'm not saying that anyone has completely unreasonable concerns about what this does mean for our community, but I will say that the part I'm most concerned about, and organizations that have been putting out, such as the Opportunity Center for the Homeless, El Pasoans Fighting Hunger Food Bank, doing some very important work to keep things from getting any more desperate than they already may be as much as possible. I'm not sure exactly what can be done given the amount. I mean, everything being ramped up to 11 in these circumstances is a significant change to what we have dealt with in this community previously. But I will just say this, that, I mean, I give much credit to law enforcement as they exist and as they have been able to deal with these issues, including the Border Patrol here. That's why I kind of find it not useful to call it an open border, because even though we have had people streaming across here, I can see why that would also maybe be a, how can you not call it that? Fact of the matter is that the fact that there is a process in place is much to the credit to the continued efforts of Border Patrol, CBP, etc. And if it weren't for them, then we would truly have that situation. Now, I understand that some may consider that a semantical argument at this point here, of if we're just passing it through, what does it actually mean here? But again, them being able to do what they do, I think, is key to keeping this from getting any more out of hand than it already is. So I still give much credit to them.
Okay, do you know who Scott Gottlieb is?
Scott Gottlieb?
Okay, the health advisor to the Biden administration.
Oh, yeah.
Former
Okay.
head of the FDA. He's also one of the board members for Pfizer. Okay. Over the weekend, he was on the CBS News in the weekend morning program, and this is one of the things he said. If we need to have expedited removal of people crossing the border illegally, I think that should be contemplated in the context of broader immigration reform and as a matter of law enforcement, but not as a public health measure at this point. I think all of these public health emergency measures that we put in place should be expired. This is one of the president's advisors to health. If this is not okay, we had Title 42. That was because of COVID.
Right.
Now we have a crisis, and people don't realize it, but these people are coming from South America, down in Brazil, down in various areas of the world where they are exposed to different types of diseases that we do not even have any immunity to at all. These people coming from these places, they have immunity because they've been exposed to all these things. We're going to be open. You think COVID's bad? Wait until we start seeing some of the diseases these people are going to bring into our country. We could close down our borders just to take care of that. Okay, that's one solution to our present problem. And I don't understand why we can't have that.
I think that, I mean, as much as the order coming down for the Supreme Court happening almost within the hour before we got on air here, a lot of very initial things with that, but I think that's probably a part of it, is a marginal part of it. I mean, has been, one example I can think of off the top of the head about things that are prevalent in our area because of, essentially once you start getting outside of the U.S. control, obviously, you don't have the same kind of public health initiatives. Tuberculosis and those kind of things are issues in our region. So I guess I see in a part where you're getting to there, but I guess juxtaposed with what has also been going on with some of the letters and lawsuits that have been being submitted by states, including Texas, about wanting to see an end to the end of the federal disaster declarations when it comes to COVID. I guess I could see that as, the situation is incongruous right now. The idea of there being still some health orders in place, and yet we're getting rid of Title 42. They don't really line up here. So I'd want to see it kind of either one way or the other, but I guess there's two parts we need to look here when it comes to the immigration situation. We have got the short term that cannot be ignored, because we are looking at, there being significant human suffering right in our backyard and in our city, if not handled incredibly carefully and incredibly well. And I'm not sure we're going to be there right now, but even longer thereon, the fact that we keep going with these temporary executive orders of what they really are, just with more, policies, title, those kind of names to them, because again, not substantive law having been passed for a while now. I'm not going to hold my breath on this next session of Congress being maybe any more productive towards that end, particularly since even with this lame duck Congress, probably not getting anywhere on some of the vaunted legislation or ideas about when it comes to DACA, the Dreamers, even with those things, even with the control that exists right now, that not being able to go through, given, we got government funding, sure, it came down into the end of the milieu. I'm just not confident that even with the next side of it, the next incoming Congress, that there's going to be much change. The appetite to actually tackle this has seemed to be very lacking within consecutive legislatures. And I'd love to be pleasantly surprised on this, but I don't think I'm going to be willing to hold my breath on it for, again, what comes in 2023.
Again, I'm kind of sick and tired of hearing about the humanitarian crisis of the people down below the border. We need to start thinking about the people in our United States first. Once we get that under control, then we can take care of these other people. One other thing that I would like to say, we have to do away with our law that says that people that come across the border, set foot on American land, all of a sudden have the right to asylum claims and can stay in the United States as long as they want to, or until their asylum claim is heard in a court of law. What we need to do is anybody who's caught coming across our border, setting foot on our land illegally, should be automatically, or they can go ahead and take their name, they can set up an appointment with them, but they should be put on a plane, sent back to their, back to their country. That would cost us a lot less money than having to put up with these people. They're making it to where we have to pay for them, we have to provide food, shelter, health care, everything else. We put them on a plane, send them back, and let them wait in their country to hear their asylum claim from their country. We do not. That has got to be done if we're serious about taking care of our border. Those two things, I think, if our representatives really wanted a solution to these problems, first, do away with that law, and second, you've got to make it where we can't have people just coming across the wall.
I mean, I'll agree with you on that last point for sure.
And expecting to be taken care of. There's a lot of people in line that want to be that are doing it correctly. They have stayed in it. They've been in line for the last 5-10 years waiting to get their cases heard or become American citizens. Those people should be at the first of the line, not at the back of it.
I guess on that point, okay, I'll agree with you on the point that the system as it's set up right now, this is not, if anyone considers this working and a good thing, I want to know, I almost don't want to know what you think a bad idea, what a non-working system would look like, because this is not meeting any of the humanitarian needs, national security needs, immigration enforcement. I mean, there's so many problems that come up with the way that this is happening right now that it almost, just listing them would probably be another damn show here. But to the point there you're bringing up about the idea of processing another country, that kind of idea has kind of been brought up, including by, local representation. Last time we had a chance to speak with Paso Congresswoman Veronica Escobar, that was brought up as a potential, whether or not, the letter has been set along those lines, whether or not that could be just set up, or given that it involves international agreements, could actually be done without acts of Congress. I'm not convinced that could just be done by a signature as opposed to a law actually having to be passed here. But I think that there's a bit of a misconception you got there when it comes to the idea of just shipping them back being less expensive. I mean, sure, I get the idea of let's make it not our problem here in the country. But for the most part, just based on the local circumstances that we see when it comes along with this, what happens is that they go through federal processing. And sure, there might be, if someone is dying in custody, those often end up being headlines. And so you want to see that dealt with at the very least. It's definitely an impetus on the organizations, federal law enforcement, ICVP, et cetera, to make sure that doesn't happen. They're in their custody. They are owed a duty, as is anyone who is in custody of a law enforcement agency. But I'm not convinced that would actually be any cheaper to ship them back, particularly flying them back, because the reason Title 42 has been used as it has been, it's not been a ship them back to point of origin. It's been a push them back across from where they immediately crossed from. And that's where Mexico, the government of Mexico, playing ball or not, has been the key part. And the fact of the matter is, all the sense I get is that they're fed up with the way this works as well. Because we've seen what has happened if Mexico determines in their best interest to cooperate or go along with the policies the U.S. is putting forth here. But I think that's also been a part of the problem. They've just been going along with as opposed to agreeing with policies, and whether or not there's even the appetite for that at this point or anytime in the near future, I think is the larger question that we're going to have to, that's what policy needs to be changed with. So that falls in the administration, Congress, diplomats, etc. In the meantime, the situation we are dealing with here on our streets, I don't see being alleviated even with that Supreme Court's announcement of the changing policies coming on today here. Yeah, I think we're locked in for at least the foreseeable near future here. So tell you what, we got to take that break right now. I do appreciate the point in the call, but coming out of this, we'll tell you what we got coming up for you on the program. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We have an accident at Gateway Boulevard and Airway Boulevard. Your alternates are going to be Hawkins Boulevard and Viscount Boulevard. We also have an accident at Lomaland Drive and Pelicano Drive. Your alternates are going to be Lee Trevino Drive and Vista del Sol Drive. And we have an accident at Tierra Este Road, northbound of Pebble Hills Boulevard. I'm Mia Allen, and that was your El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by the Mark Moss Show podcast.
Is the Binance crypto exchange at risk of blowing up next? And what does Bitcoin's price tell us what comes next? I'm Mark Moss, helping you navigate the decentralized revolution. Listen to the Mark Moss Show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts.
This holiday season, 12 strangers, 12 tales, 12 ghosts. A fiction podcast from me, Aaron Mankey, starring Malcolm McDowell.
So, this is the afterlife.
This is the liminal space between life and the next chapter. This is the great in-between.
A chilling new collection of stories presented in immersive 3D audio starting December 14th, ending on Christmas Day. Listen to 12 Ghosts on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. Annual enrollment is from October 15th to December 7th. This is the time to select a Medicare Advantage plan and start enjoying great benefits. Part C plans can help you add vision, dental, hearing, prescriptions, gym membership, and some plans can even help reduce the cost of Part B. If you are new to Medicare or just need to renew, Medicare Prepare is here to help. Visit them at 10295 North Loop Drive or call Medicare Prepare at 915-626-5113. In-home appointments available.
This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to a decline in the economy, CarShield is announcing a low-cost month-to-month vehicle protection plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on future auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay almost nothing for covered auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-838-4715 now. Drivers who are covered will not have to pay for covered repairs again. This protection plan is at an all-time low. Additionally, drivers who activate this vehicle protection today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and car rental options at no additional cost. Call us for your free quick quote today. 800-838-4715. That's 800-838-4715. What do you have to lose? Call 800-838-4715. Again, 800-838-4715.
El Pasoans Fighting Hunger and iHeartRadio have teamed up again to bring back the Buy the Box campaign this year to help those in need in our community this holiday season and beyond. Please consider donating during this most generous time of the year with your organization to Buy the Box. You'll not only be helping your neighbors right in our community to fight hunger, but you'll also be able to boost your business with a complimentary iHeartRadio advertising campaign. For details and to learn more, go to elpasoansfightinghunger.org. That's elpasoansfightinghunger.org/BUY the box.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. One thing I want to make sure we had clear, some announcements over the weekend about the openings or closing of some of our sponsors there. Pepe's New Mexican Restaurant in Cañutillo is going to be open this week, Tuesday through Saturday. Go ahead and give them a call for hours. You can find them there over on Donovan Drive, not too far from Talbot, but it will be open through next Saturday. So we will be going out there after the El Paso History Radio Show. Next Saturday, they'll be closing then at 3 that day, but they're going to be open Tuesday through Saturday this coming week and then close for the holiday. But a couple of things we also want to tell you about what we got coming up for you on the program. More talk about situations. We barely even touched on the city and county things. We'll have much more on that coming up for you here, but that's about it. Out of time here for the show. So I do want to thank everyone that did tune in, call in, comment, participate in the show seriously. The conversations are what make this worthwhile for me and hopefully useful for you also. We'll do it again tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. as we do every Monday through Friday. Thursday this week, as we're going to be out of the studio for the observed holiday. But in the meantime, until then, so Free for All show on Friday as well. What are we actually going to be calling it? Throwdown Thursday. Anyway, in the meantime, until then, stay safe out there. Look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
We have an accident at Gateway Boulevard and Airway Boulevard. Your alternates are going to be Hawkins Boulevard and Viscount Boulevard. We also have an accident at Lomaland Drive and Pelicano Drive. Your alternates are going to be Lee Trevino Drive and Vista del Sol Drive. And we have an accident at Tierra Este Road, northbound of Pebble Hills Boulevard. I'm Nia Allen, and that was your El Paso traffic.
Portions of the following program were pre-recorded.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager from Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. The Christmas season is here, and this is our gift to you. We're offering our biggest discounts of the year on every new and certified pre-owned vehicle in our huge inventory.
Get our biggest discounts of the year at exceptional trade-in values.
News on the hour and the hat. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. The Supreme Court is pausing the lifting of Title 42 for now. Chief Justice John Roberts granted a temporary stay Monday afternoon. Several states filed an emergency application asking the High Court to keep Title 42 from ending, claiming it would lead to an overwhelming flood of immigrants. The rule allowed border agents to expel any immigrant over COVID concerns. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre spoke after the January 6th committee voted to refer potential criminal charges against former President Trump to the Justice Department.
The committee has been doing important bipartisan work to get to the truth of what happened on that very day. So we can make sure that doesn't happen again. So I'll leave it there.
In a hearing, the committee said those charges against Trump include insurrection. Los Angeles jurors in the sex assault trial of Harvey Weinstein say they have reached a verdict. Weinstein is accused of sexually assaulting 4 women in the Los Angeles area. He's already been convicted of sexual assault in New York. Voting begins on the University of California deal that could end a 5-week strike. An agreement was reached Friday with about 36,000 graduate student workers and researchers to boost their pay and improve benefits.
I study mathematics and coding theory for those who are curious. But I don't have the opportunity to do my best research if the university doesn't pay me enough to live in a decent and fair way.
That's one of many researchers that spoke at rallies across the state. On Saturday, those against the deal said they would launch a statewide campaign to urge others not to ratify. NASA says it has pinpointed the cold